Andy, great to speak to you at the press conference for this big one between Joseph Parker and Derek Chisora. You've had a little bit longer to work with him now. How's Joseph looking?
Listen, he was looking good the last time, but looking in hindsight, it wasn't enough time to affect any change. As I said, in bed habits and stuff like that, especially when he trained a certain way for so long and fought a certain way for so long. But not that we'll have a full time together, like a good 8 weeks together this time, but it's also the time in between the fight. Him understanding, being around me and Tyson, and helping me with my other fighters, and just getting an understanding of the psychology of what I want him to of how he should be in a fight and how he should think.
When it comes to Joseph, he's so well ranked with a number of different governing boards, so this is a really dangerous fight for him, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's also an opportunity to get people excited again about him, and that's what he needs. I think he's highly ranked. Everyone knows him because he's had those big fights, but the last couple of years he's kind of been forgotten about, and no one talks about him as up there mixing it again or challenging again or contending again for the titles. He needs an exciting performance now, a good knockout win, and really when you look at the heavyweight division and the way it's panned out with Joshua losing and Tyson having that epic fight, he's right in the mix with any of them. I can beat any of them, and the way he's looking in the gym now, the focus I see in him, I think he realised it, and but it's all well and good in the gym. He has to do it in the fight.
You said there up on the stage that he'd never take on Tyson Fury in a fight. When it comes to Tyson, you spent a lot of time with him recently. Do you get the sense there's hunger to go again next year and take on the challenges that may be standing in his way?
When I arrived in Morecambe a few weeks ago, first day we went out for a coffee, and I said, "What do you do? Do you retire? Do you hang him up?" He said, "I'm thinking that way." But then he said, "On the other hand, what else would I do in my life?" He said he loves to train, he loves to fight. And although there's no challenges out there for him, he can still take a good lot of pleasure in cleaning up the division and beating these other guys, and also earning a hell of a lot of money when doing it. And he likes the Dillian Whyte fight. He's infused by that. That's what he's talking about to me, so I can see that being the next one.
One thing Tyson told us before the Wilder fight was that the only fighter that can beat Tyson Fury is Tyson Fury. So if he was to step in the ring with Dillian Whyte, do you feel like that hunger would be there still?
I think even with the third Wilder fight, there's a danger of not complacency, but just a bit of being comfortable. Dillian Whyte and Tyson sparred a lot of rounds in the past, so they know each other. And Tyson, although both fighters would improve, I think Tyson probably has that mental edge, even though he has a mental edge over everybody. Yeah, so that's the only fear I would have, is not complacency, but just a bit of comfortableness, and not having that element of fear. I think is always a good thing going into a fight.
And I guess a completely different fight I want to ask you about is Tommy Fury against Jake Paul. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's a fight that Tommy surely can't afford to lose at this stage in his career, but it's great that Tyson's so involved in this camp.
Yeah, he's got the best man for him in the camp. And even with my fighters, being able to call Tyson or having him on hand for his opinion is invaluable. I always ask him what does he think of Joseph, or how he's training, or how he's looking. Jason Quigley, he's in Morecambe at the moment. He's going to fight Andrade next week for the world title. And Tyson's been a great help to me with my coaching, and now I can see what he's trying to do with Tommy. He's cooking for him. He's living in Tyson's house next door, and yeah, I think it's going to be. I think Tommy's kind of put himself in a no-win situation, whereas if he beats Jake Paul, so what? But if he loses, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look good for him, is it? And especially with the family and the family name and all of that. But he should win. He should win. Like, I haven't watched much of Jake Paul, but what I have seen, he's not a fighter. He's not a real fighter. He doesn't have any understanding of what it is, of distance, or controlling the fight, or ring generalship. He just knows how to throw his hands, and anyone can do that.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the situation with Anthony Joshua. He's been out in America looking at working with a number of different trainers, but he's not quite made that clean break yet with Rob McCracken. What do you make of his situation?
I think Rob McCracken still has a huge role to play in his career, and obviously he's one of the best. Look what he's done with Team GB. He's transformed the British boxing team from an average, Western European team, which would obviously have the one special fighter every Olympics, Odi Harrison, Amir Khan, where now they're consistently winning gold medals and bronze and new silver. So he's obviously an experienced coach. But I think going across to America is sometimes not always the answer. I think because Tyson's done it and had a great result, you've had Chisora going with Buddy McGurk, Dillian White's got Harold Shadow Knight, Boatsi's with Virgil Hunter, and it's really successful. It's boxing coaching it's about knowledge, but it's also about personalities. And if I could make a recommendation for Anthony Joshua, if it's worth anything, I recommend it Sugar Hill for Tyson. I would recommend Adam Booth for Anthony Joshua. I think that's a match made in heaven. I think there's nobody in this game who understands boxing, or in Britain, or in this game in general, who understands what's needed to make significant improvements, to assess the fighter and verbalize and articulate how and why you should do a certain thing and why it will be effective. And there's no guessing with Adam. There's no smoke and mirrors. There's no, for want of a better word, blowing smoke up your backside. Because you get a lot of that in America, and you get a lot of that in boxing in general. There's a lot of con man in this game. Adam Booth is the best coach in England to me, and I think him and Anthony Joshua would be a very exciting matchup.
Has there got to be one voice? Because I know it worked well with Tyson in that second fight. You were, I guess, the assistant to Sugar Hill Stewart, but ultimately, does there need to be one voice or just a number of people with the same vision?
No, there can only be one captain steering the ship. There are always other people involved in teams, but they only have to supplement. Whether it's the strength and conditioning coach, sometimes they get priority over what the boxing coach. Sometimes you're catching up with these guys, but if I recommend Adam Booth, I would add a caveat to that. Whereas when they go to the gym, it's only them who enter the gym. They locked it all behind them. There's nobody with cameras. There's no hype men. There's nobody clapping or whooping and hollering. Close the door, go into the gym, and go to work, and the results will speak for themselves. Because I think Adam Booth is, as I said, the best coach out there, and him and Joshua together would make a vicious, dangerous team.
And final one, in terms of AJ's approach inside the ring, I think everybody agrees that the approach was wrong, but a lot of people have said since that AJ needs to use his attributes, his strength, his size. How does he do that? Because I guess it's easier said than done.
You have to know what your fighter is capable of, how much he can push. And I think Robin McCracken fully well knows, had he pushed or had he gone forward, he might not have the engine. If you haven't trained that way, you can't just go out and do it in a fight. You have to train for the fight you're going to fight and the strategy you're going to employ. But just, I think if you added more whip to his shots, understand what he's doing, what was happening to him in the fight, he was getting jabbed over his jab consistently, and it was putting him, and it was an override jab, from a southpaw. You jab and they jab, it's on the same level, and every time Anthony Joshua jabbed, Usyk would just come over his jab with it, straight over the top at the same time, and it was just putting Anthony Joshua back, and he couldn't understand. It looked to me like he didn't understand that was going on. Also, the feints of Usyk, without having the punch, he was making Joshua guess himself, tighten up, and all that tighten up is burning energy. So he has to understand what's happening in front of him, why it's happening, and it's not just about using his assets, because he's a big, strong, powerful man. That's always going to be there. It's about just understanding, I think, and no better man than Adam Booth.